We have 4 here from the old board, because we couldn't have,
Dr. Cuneo,
we're not ready yet?
now going live.
Okay. Ready, Amy?
Okay, Director Asner,
Here.
Director Faulkner,
Here.
Director Petrov. Here. And President Cuneo.
Here. Always at the beginning of the meeting, we start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And since we are right here, and this will be a continuation of our next meeting, well, we'll say it now, but we won't say it once we get into the business meeting, just to let everyone know. Everyone stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a quorum. Can I have someone to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Governing Council election results, please. Read those out so we have those in the minutes, please.
Sure, so. The motion is to approve the March 1st Governing Council election results for school board members representing districts 4, 5, and 6. So, Subdistrict 4 is Mr. Scott Moeller, 14 districts representing a population of 623,505 people. Subdistrict 5, Dr. Meredith Byers, representing 15 districts, representing a population of 626,892. And Ms. Tiffany Hudson is 12 districts, representing a population of 609,807 people. And just to clarify, Subdistrict 4, Mr. Scott Moeller, is for a 1-year term.
Congratulations, everyone.
We need a motion.
Can I have a motion to approve the results?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. All right. Now, can we have an administration of the oath to all our elected officials?
Oh, we're going to go on to the podium. Go over to commercial, please. On this side of me, and our viewers that are watching on YouTube can see it as well. If you see it here, then our viewers will be able to watch it. Yeah, if you want to just stand.
Okay.
Sure. Is that okay? Yeah. Perfect. That's fine. So we're going to just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of school director in and for Special School District of St. Louis County, Missouri. To the best of my ability. According to law. So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay, congratulations.
Do we have, did anyone else, do we need to take pictures right now of this?
I think we got all of the
We got all
family
we
members
need?
in there.
Great, fantastic.
Okay,
Thank you.
sign it, and I will notarize it. Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't push it.
Be careful.
All right, now we need to have an election of our officers. Election of president. Someone like to make any nominations?
Motion to nominate Dr. Cuneo for president.
Someone like to second that?
Second.
All right. Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Oh, come on, guys. All right.
That's a good thing. Balance
Okay.
is good on that one.
Election of vice president, nominations. Katie, you said you were interested?
Yeah.
Motion to nominate Katie Patras for vice president.
Any other nominations? Need a second on Katie's.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Election of secretary. I nominate Amy.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a second?
Oh, we had a
I
second.
second.
We had a second.
Thank you.
All opposed? I'm not sure we could do without Amy here. Okay, motion carries. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
You will find that anytime there's a motion for an adjournment, there is never an argument. All righty. 5 minutes early. Do we have to wait? Since we're still going on the same live feed, let's have a call to order. And this includes all the new officials.
Just a minute to get switched over to the other meeting.
Isn't it on the same?
It's in the same, yeah, you don't have to.
No, you don't have to do anything, I just have to turn on board. Okay.
We would normally, at the beginning of every business meeting, start after the roll call, go into the Pledge of Allegiance. Since we just said it, we're not going to, 15 minutes ago, we're not going to do that again. But we will have to have a call of order. This way we can have all our new board members involved. Please.
Director Asner,
Present.
Director Byers. Director Faulkner,
Present.
Director Hudson. Present. Director Mueller,
Present.
Vice President Petrov. Here. And President Brown, President Cuneo.
Here,
Gosh.
Julie was here before.
Gosh.
All right, I had some comments from the outgoing board members. If any of you are listening, maybe we should have sent them some of their dinners.
Yeah, we should have done Uber Eats for them, huh?
Yeah, I should say that there is not tons of money spent on dinners here, but they are tasty and Amy takes care of everything there. Okay, I want to share our appreciation for the contributions of the outgoing Board of Education members. Ms. Julie Brown, Ms. Jan Goodman, Ms. Nancy I, as well as Ms. Teresa Morgan, who stepped down from the board late last year. Reason why there was not something done for Teresa Morgan when she did was that we were so involved with the whole COVID thing. It just, she needs to be recognized. Anyhow, these 4 dedicated individuals have contributed greatly to the leadership and the success of SSD. Julie Brown, thank you for your service on the board. Thank you for serving as vice president. We'll miss your insight, your laughter, your knowledge. We wish you well. Jan Goodman. Jan, I can't imagine being on the board without you. You sat next to me for 15 years. SSD has benefited from your knowledge and your insight, your ability to work from numbers, and all of the extra committees you served on. You have been an integral part of SSD for the past 15 years, and you will be truly missed. Nancy I. I've worked with you through my time here with SSD when you worked in the communications department. We appreciate the time you served as an employee of the district and as a member of the board. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Teresa Morgan, while we only served together on the board briefly, we know you have a passion for SSD and our students. Even though you no longer serve on the board, we are fortunate to have you as a dedicated member of our staff. We wish you well, and we wish to see you often. All right, thank you. Public speakers, we have no public comments tonight?
No, we do not.
We have the one from Jan. Jan Goodman, one of our ex-board members, had sent a public comment, and I thought I'd read it. To everyone at SSD, I wanted to take the opportunity to say how much I valued working with the Board of Education to support the students and staff of SSD over the past 15 years. I have the highest respect and admiration for our staff and all of the work that has been done throughout my service, especially during this pandemic year, which has been particularly challenging for the students, staff, and parents. The taxpayers of St. Louis County should be proud of them. SSD is currently positioned to make great strides with critical equity initiatives, and I trust you will continue to carry the work forward with zeal. Our children and families deserve that. Thank you again for your service, Jan Goodman. Thank you, Jan. All righty. Next, would someone like to make a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Jim stands. First, we have the superintendent's report. First thing we have is the equity framework.
So we have Dr. Molly Bolton, who is our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning and Accountability. And we have Dr. Michael Macklin, who is our Director of Equity. They had presented to the board in October on our equity plan, and we wanted to bring back to you what the work that they've been working on with the equity plan, and that this framework is going to be utilized in the day-to-day work here in SSD. I would like to welcome both of you, and this is informational for the board to be able to look for the equity framework, and we're going to bring this to approval for the board at the April 27th meeting. So we still have another month to kind of work on any recommendations in between then, but we wanted to make sure that we were up to speed on the new plan with everybody. And Molly's going to move right over so everyone can see her, everybody.
Sorry, I moved it, and I messed up the camera.
Sorry.
So, good evening. President Cudio, Vice President Patra, Board of Directors, and Dr. Keenan. My name is Molly Bolton. I am the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. Tonight I have with me Dr. Michael Macklin, who is the Director of Equity. And we have a presentation on the equity framework. for you this evening. Next slide. Purpose of this presentation is to present to you our updated draft of our equity framework. As Dr. Keenan explained, we did bring this framework to the board for feedback a few months ago and have done some more work on it and wanted to share those updates with you. Next slide. So last time we presented the history of SSD and equity. You do have a handout that has the draft of the framework. It's your thicker handout there. So you can kind of page through it as we're moving along. So we did a summary of SSD's equity work over the past few years. The next page is the big picture and ultimate goals. And these have had slight tweaks with feedback from our stakeholder groups, but have stayed pretty much the same. Our equity statement was approved by the board in January, and that you will also see in the framework, as well as the why, what, and how. We have edited the why statement to include the groups that are represented through this equity plan. Then we move to the essential questions and indicators of progress and success, and then the guiding principles and action plans. And that's where we want to focus a lot of our time this evening, as that is the newest part of the framework. So the way we have the guiding principles and action plans put together is those principles have now become the goal of an action plan. Each action plan has that goal or that guiding principle, as well as the level of implementation, whether that's done at the district level or at our SSD schools level. We also have the collective action, which leads us to the action steps, the stage of implementation, if it's in planning or implementation, and the time frame that we would like to complete those action steps in, as well as the champions that will be working on those specific action steps, any resources that might be needed, our CSIP goal alignment, as well as then our measure and our metric of those action steps.
Dr. Bohm, could you do me a favor? When we use an acronym like CSIP, we have some individuals here that have just started.
Sure.
And I remember when I first started, I kept hearing
Different acronyms.
acronyms,
Sure.
and I was lost.
Sure.
And they may all have a much wider background than I had when I came on.
Yep.
Can you give a brief summary or a brief explanation of what a CSIP is?
Absolutely. CSIP stands for the Continuous School Improvement Plan. Every district is required by the state of Missouri to have a CSIP plan for the district. CSIPs usually run a life cycle of 3 to 5 years. We are in the 4th year of our 5-year cycle. With our new strategic plan coming forward in the next few months for approval, we will be developing, as we will be on our last year of our current CSIP plan, we will be developing a new CSIP plan next year that will either cover a 3 or 5-year cycle. And I'm sure you guys, through your board orientations, will be getting copies and further information about that plan. We have 4 major goal areas in that plan. So the first one is student success, and then we have different strategies under students that would help us achieve the goal of student success. Our second one is workforce, which relates a lot to our human resources. And then our third one is voice of customer, where we're looking at our survey data. And our fourth one is actually an equity goal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next slide, please. One thing I also want to say about the action plans is this will be a living document. So as we achieve these action plans, this will be evaluated annually, and we will be bringing to the board an update in the fall, typically around November, of where we are on the action plans, and then we will be bringing the completed action plans as well as our proposals for the following year's action plans around this time, next year. So these are our guiding principles, and what I would like to do is also direct you into the framework. For each principal, we will have an action plan. So our presentation this evening, what I would like to do is state the principle and then kind of go through the high points of those action plans, which I'll direct you to the page number for that. So our first guiding principle is special school district is committed to ensuring equity in all policies, processes, and procedures, and operating practices. So if you turn to page 10 in your equity framework, this is actually our longest action plan, as it does span 2 pages. We did try to keep them to 1 page, but this one just has a lot under it when you think about all the policies, procedures, processes. You'll also notice color coding here, where you have the blue on page 10, and the blue pieces are the district pieces, and then the beige color, those would be specific to our SSD schools. And we do have that designated into the district or school level as well, but if you're wondering about the color coding. So under this guiding principle, we have a few action items. So the first one is being able to review the policies and regulations. Dr. Macklin has been working on that piece and actually will have recommendations to come to the policy committee very soon about our policies and regulations. And then review the policies and then revise the policies through the policy committee if needed. So those are those actions. Also, they will review policies and procedures moving forward. So any new policies or review of policies and regulations, we'll be reviewing those through the lens of equity. Departmental equity review of the different departments or divisions that we have in the school district from the lens of equity, looking at their processes and procedures. And then annually helping our staff and training them on doing some self-evaluations of those equity reviews with their policies and procedures. Then if we move down into the school level, we will see equity review of the school policies and procedures, as well as the handbooks. And so those will be taking place. Each of our schools have an equity committee, and they have gone through training, and Dr. Macklin supports them as well. And so they will be reviewing their handbooks as well as policies and procedures throughout the schools to ensure that equity lens. The second guided principle that I'd like to talk about is leadership. So Special School District is committed to providing leadership at all levels, which fosters an equitable environment. So that action plan is found on page 13 of the framework. And you can see we have 2 major action items that we'd like to start with there. The first being to develop a trained cadre of district leaders and staff around the equity framework and those basic components of equity, diversity, assumptions, and inclusion to support all of the district's efforts. The second is related to our schools, where we will look at continuing to develop the capacity of our equity teams and in order to affect change and ensure equity at that school level as well. Our third principle is about inclusivity and making sure members are a part of the school community. And that action plan starts on, you'll be able to see that on page 16. So Special School District will recognize, intentionally recruit, and engage all members of the school community in order to maintain and embody equitable educational practices and outcomes. You can see a lot of these are at the district level. So implementing the equity strategies to recruit and retain a more diverse staff. And this actually aligns to our Continuous School Improvement Plan, or our CSIP plan, as that is one of the strategies that's also listed there. So we'd be working in collaboration with them. Implement equity strategies to include a more diverse community and families in decision-making activities. So making sure, our families have a place at the table when we're making those decisions for the district. Implementing equity strategies to increase family engagement, especially those groups that we find that are less likely to participate. We do have one of our continuous school improvement, or CSIP strategies, is focused on family engagement. That is something we firmly believe in as a district, and we'll be working with that group very tightly to ensure those folks are at the table and we're able to engage them and meet them where they want to be and be able to make sure that we hear their voice. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Macklin to take us on to the next one.
Great, thank you, Trade Places.
Yes.
Again, President Cuneo, Vice President Patroff, Dr. Keenan, and directors, one of the things I would like to reiterate that Dr. Bolton stated, that this is a living live document. And so with this being a draft, I will be reporting changes and modifications to the Board of Education. If you could turn with me to page 18. Page 18. And of course, the goal there is the district is committed to providing leadership at all levels. The key piece, a couple of key pieces here, is really the collective action as relates to curriculum, learning materials, and school practices. So review and assess existing curriculum, first step there, for bias-free, cultural relevant concepts and contents. We all know that when students see themselves, a reflection of themselves in the curriculum, they feel more valued. And so we want to make sure that we have those experiences. Also review and assess existing curriculum for the variety of methods and measures by which students can demonstrate knowledge, skills, and learning. This directly correlates to CSIP Goal 1, which is student performance, then also CSIP Goal 4, which is equity there. You can turn with me now to page 21. And on page 21 here, where we're looking at bias-free student assessment, evaluation, reporting, you see that most of the goals here, really all of the goals here, are established at the district level. Knowing that if it's established at the district level, it will permeate through the schools. And so looking at the special school district will provide appropriate and bias-free assessment, evaluation, and reporting to equitably meet the educational needs of students. And so that first collective action there is to develop a list of topics that could be areas of potential biases in assessment. Biases in assessment. We know that research shows that there are many biases in assessment, and so to delve into that is key. And the champion of that work, of course, is Director of Equity, myself, and then school sites, and then also our DRMS committee. And that correlates to student goal 1 and 1.3, and then goal 4 of equity 4.1.
Can you explain to me what DRMS is, what that stands for?
Thank you, Dr. Cuneo, for helping me out with that. That's actually our disproportionate representation of identification of minority student committee. And so one of the things that I'm very, very proud of the work that that committee has already done is to look at biases and inequities as relates to over-identification and under-identification of students.
Dr. Macklin, could you, and again, I'm not saying that your presentation is excellent, but do you mind explaining also what disproportionality is, since we have 3 new board members here that may not have been familiar with that term in education?
So when we look at disproportionality, we do receive a report from the state where we look at a few different areas that we may have over or under representation of. Some of those areas include suspension, and in particular, we look at suspension rates. A few of our districts have been found disproportionate with suspension rates with students of color, males especially, where they receive a higher rate of suspension, especially out-of-school suspension, compared to their white peers. And so another area is diagnosis, and so looking at the diagnosis rates. And so one of those that we have targeted in our districts is an over-identification of African-American males in the intellectual disabilities category. and typically compared to the rest of the population, as well as an under-identification in the area of autism. And so those are a couple areas, and I do believe they'll be talking more about that in their board orientation as well. Is that
Great,
correct?
thank you.
Okay.
Still on page 21, they're looking at the collective actions. The second one there on 21 is to investigate inequities from the topic list through a data and file review. So being able to examine those pieces and complete it with topic recommendations. The last collective action there on 21, the last collective action on 21 is to examine assessment tools used by special school districts for bias and provided recommendations for tools found to be least biased. We know that because persons have bias who are creating those tools, that we want to be able to examine those pieces to analyze those and to ensure that we have a recommendation from that. Also, when you look at the implementation timeline, I do want to pay attention to the implementation timeline, because when most organizations, schools get stuck on equity initiatives, it's because the timeline isn't there along with the implementation. So that's a key piece when you look through the document. When goals need to be met, when objectives need to be met, when what the measurement and metric is from there. We're still moving. If you can turn with me and go to page 23. Equitable student programming and placement. Special school district will provide equitable programming and placement for students across the county. And so you can see there, the first goal is at the district level. The second goal there, by the tan color, is at the school level. Complete the revision for the process of change of placement, demonstrate consistent use throughout the file review. So that is implementation time frame from current to September of 22, there with the goal alignment there to goal 1, and actually CSIP 1.3, 1.4, and then also goal 4. The last column on page 23 there, which is at the school level, utilize the intervention and selection process along with other intervention tools developed as a part of CSIP 1 to develop interventions plans for students. And that is vital, because waiting until the last second for interventions is most often not successful. So being able to do that is key there. And again, the measurement of that, of course, is student growth, benchmark data, IEP, goal data, and so forth. You can turn with me to page 25. Equitable support services. Special school district will provide equitable counseling and related services and support services. The collective action there on page 25, you can see in the blue, which is a district collective action review process for identifying and supporting for individuals who require support services. Again, who require support services. And so that goal is goal 1, and then goal 4 with equity. And then page 27. Page 27. The goal is special school district will provide professional learning resources and follow high-quality professional learning feedback evaluation for all district personnel. And so when you look at the collective action to develop a conceptual framework of equity, which is agreed upon the district, it is what we are taking a look at and doing tonight, and we'll be bringing back in April. They're also to work with and train district leaders in the framework. So this is a living, live tool. This is a living, live document, not something that sits on the shelf, but becomes handily ready and able to use as we becomes part of our work. And also working with equity teams. And then the last action there is develop and identify a series of training modules to increase the understanding the 3 basic components of equity provide training to district personnel, using train the trainer model to reach all staff. And again, those align to goal 1, goal 2, and then goal 4.
So that ends our action plan presentation. So we'd like to open it up to any questions or comments that you might have.
Got some questions. First of all, thank you, because this is what I was asking about some meetings ago about the meeting, what are we going to do? So I really appreciate all the work you guys have done. I had a couple of questions I'm going to try to kind of go through plan by plan. Just bear with me while I flip some pages. My first question was about the policies. And my question was just, this was a comment in general about you're going to do equity review of the policies. Can you tell me just a little bit about what it is that you're going to be looking for? What kind of things are you concerned about as you go through the policies?
Sure. When you're reviewing the policies through an equity lens, you're looking for inequities, policies that would leave out the lost, the lookout, and the marginalized. And so you want to make sure that when you're looking at the policy, it is adequate for everyone, and that all students are benefiting from the policy. And then when you look at the policies, you also look at and see who's not benefiting from the policy and then why. Those are key pieces in the policy review. You know, take a look at that. A lot of times, Director Ashley, when you look at the policy is written equitable. And so it's not necessarily the policy, but you find your inequity is in the regulation.
I was going to recommend that you also look at the reg.
We are. Yeah.
So, and that's why I bring that up, because part of the review process is the policy, but also the regulation. And so that regulation is the piece on how the policy is implemented. And so that is a key piece on how.
I would, if you wouldn't mind, I would recommend, if on the regs, once you get through the policy committee, the board doesn't always see every reg. Could you, if you tweak them, where it's under a equity lens, could you also then make sure that the whole board gets to at least be able to see that, so that we can see how it's being implemented?
Dr. Cuneo, any tweaks to the policy would come to policy committee.
Right.
In regs as well, but the board doesn't see it.
Yeah, the board may not see the regs. We see the policies.
Right.
So
Just be like a report, like an email. Doesn't have to be a big report, but just something
say, okay,
contained.
Like in your training package.
You know, what we did was,
Yeah.
and I don't see how that would be confidential or anything. I mean, you could just send that out.
No, we actually send them out to the staff. So,
Yeah, so I would think that if, on the regs, if in fact it needs to be tweaked with the equity lens, I would like the whole board to see that, not just the policy.
And Dr. Macklin, you have reviewed most of the policies.
Yes,
You're in the regulations now, but you
Yes.
don't find any issues with the policies right now.
correct.
And then on page 16, this was the inclusivity of members of the school communities. I was just curious about the first measurement, the increasing diversity by 2% by job type. How did you come up with that number?
Sorry, can you repeat that question there?
Yeah, so for page 16, one of the actions was to implement strategies to recruit and retain more diverse staff. And the measurement was to increase diversity by 2% by job type. And I was kind of curious about how you came up with the 2% number.
Well, when you look at the percentage if you look at the percentage of African-American males that are teaching right now across the country, it is 2%. And so that's across the country. And so you're not going to give a fictitious number of 22 or 12% or 18%. You want to make sure that you're factual with that number. And so that number was derived from that concept and that theory.
Okay, so like an achievable.
100%.
I remember most of our equity and our percentages and whatever are based on the county model or the state? We use
Both.
the county, don't we? I'm saying, and
the region,
the
the
region.
Midwest region.
So we use all three percentages.
But Dr. Macklin's referring to the national data, that only 2% of special educators in the nation are African-American males.
And my last question or comment was on page 25. This was the equity support services. And this may be a redundant question, at least, so please forgive me here, but just again, the metric here was that we were going to look at the processes and define them and vet them, and I was going to ask, is there a metric looking at the actual access to the support services that can be included in there somehow, or that we look at to just say, are we in the right place, or are we moving in the right direction?
We could take a look at that.
If you have suggestions.
Or questions? Again, thank you very much, because this is really what I was hoping to see.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I do actually, I want to say thank you, Dr. Macklin and Dr. Bolton, for presenting. I do have a curiosity about page 16, which we were just on the implementing equity strategies to include more diverse community and family members in decision-making activities. What are some ideas you have on that? What does that look like in your mind?
Can you repeat that question for me?
What do you imagine that looking like, implementing equity strategies to include more diverse community and family members?
Well, you're to examine right now, and if you look there at the metric, really to examine right now on why you don't have more diverse, right? And so to find out what that is, and then once we're able to analyze that and pinpoint that with intentional focus, then to start putting some strategies in place together from there.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
And our family engagement, continuous school improvement team, strategy team, we have a family and community outreach manager who we've been working very closely with equity as well. And she has been digging into the research to find out what are some great research-based strategies that we can use to engage our families. We know if our families are more engaged, they're more likely to come to the table.
What's
and
the
help
name of
us.
that person again who's doing that?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of that person who's doing that again?
Adrian England.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have an audit update.
All right, Dr. Haag, who is our Chief Operations Officer, will update the board on the audit that took place in the summer and fall of this year, and we reported it out in December. And so he's going to update the board on the process as we have an RFP process in place too for a bid for the audit to happen for next year.
Thank you. Good evening, President Cuneo, Vice President Petroff, Board of Education, and Dr. Keenan. My name is Jeff Hogg. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Special School District, and tonight I'll provide an update on the audit process. As a reminder, the FY20 audit received an unmodified opinion, which is the highest rating an audit can receive. This means that there were no concerns and SSD maintains a clean audit. The audit, historically, prior to the last few years, had been finalized in October and brought to the committee and board in November. DESE states the audit must be submitted by December 31st each year and brought to the board in December, so we're in compliance with that. The board and the audit committee, though, however, has asked for the audit to be brought for approval in November. And so I wanted to talk about the procedures for that. But I would like to remind you that there were 2 recommendations made by the auditor this year. So they suggested first, we focus on timely closing procedures. They've suggested the pre-established deadlines remain firm, and then possible work to be done on documents throughout the year to minimize a year-end burden. And deadlines have already been established. They've been reset. And those documents that we can work on throughout the year have already been identified so that we're not doing everything once the year ends. And then the second recommendation centers on student financial aid procedures. Historically, this hasn't been a concern, but what happened this past year was with our adult ed classes, there was a delay with the fall reconciliation with these numbers. And this is due to one person being on leave and that being the only person who knew how to read the steps for reconciliation. So also a majority of the process was completed by hand when third-party software was available. So we've already started working on the third-party software to make it easier for us, and we've already cross-trained 2 people in the business and finance department so that more people know how to do that. So this will not be a concern moving forward. As we look at the key performance indicators for the audit, what are the visions, the strategies, and what are we going to monitor? and where do we want to be? So we want to continue with that unmodified opinion, we want to continue with no findings, and we want to continue with the timely completion. So how do we want to get there? We'd like to follow the timeline and calendar, and we want to provide accurate documents. And then what will we monitor? We'll have weekly auditor meetings, weekly superintendent meetings, weekly director of finance meetings, and weekly calendar submissions to the board. And so this evening, we're going to bring an audit recommendation to the board. And after that, myself and our director of finance will meet with the approved firm to finalize the documents. Once it's approved, we'll meet with them, we'll discuss the submission calendar, field work dates, if they can come out into the district. If not, we'll discuss what that'll look like again, and then a final submission date. So then, as we talked about, in order to meet that November deadline, we're going to have all documents due and complete by October 1st of 2021. The finance department has already met January 6th to identify internal factors that may have led to a delay in document submissions, as well as we will have 3 additional meetings between now and June 30th, which is the end of the fiscal year. So we are already working on what documents we can have updated and out and ready to go by the close of the year. When we meet with the auditors and when we put out the RFP, we put this calendar in with it. So in April, we'll conduct an entrance conference with the auditor and the SSD audit committee. In June, we'll complete the interim audit work, and what that means is that is any document that we can get out that does not depend on year-end numbers. And so when we close on June 30th, there are several documents that then go into effect. What we've done is identified documents that can be completed prior to that date. October 1st, we will have complete final audit work and submitted the auditors. October 11th, we'll review the draft with the administration. October 18th, we'll have our audit committee meeting, and then we will bring the final audit to the board in November. Like I talked about, we work off of 2 calendars. One's that June interim calendar, and the other's the year-end calendar. And again, June interim is a calendar that we can work on prior to, documents that we can work on prior to the close of the year, and then the year-end calendar will be all the dates or all the documents that are based off of the closing numbers as of the end of the fiscal year. So these calendars are in Excel with due dates and with people responsible. And what we're going to do this year differently from last is we're going to have progress indicators. So if it is 0 to 75% complete, the document needed will be in red. If it's 76 to 99% complete, we'll have it in yellow. 100% complete and submitted, we'll turn it green. And once it's approved by the auditors, we'll have it blue. So we'll be able to have kind of a running record, a running document of what we still need and what's been submitted. And so then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have some weekly meetings. On Fridays, the business and finance department will meet, and we'll review that audit submission calendar. On Mondays, I will call the auditor, and we will touch base with where we're at. On Tuesdays, I will provide an update to the superintendent, and then on Fridays, when you receive your board packet, you'll receive an updated color-coded calendar of the documents needed. And so for the FY21 Audit Bid, the Audit Committee met last week to discuss the bids and how we wanted to progress. Jim Torty was the director at Showalter and Jabari. That's the company that we have used for the past several years. He's retiring this year, and to help with transition through this process, the Audit Committee recommended the district should request to extend the audit contract for 1 additional year with Showalter and Jabari, and then bid next January for a full bid in January of 2022. Kind of what that timeline would look like is the Audit Committee, when they review the audit for this year, will review the RFP as well. And then RFP services will go out in January, and they'll be due in February. And if you're wondering why they wouldn't go out sooner, between September and December, auditors wouldn't have time to complete a bid.
Can you explain what an RFP is?
Yes, it's a request for proposals. And so when a school district needs to hire services, we have to put together a document so that firms can submit what they believe it would cost them to do for those 4 years. So basically, it's an open and honest process to obtain work. We can't just go with, we can't send it to one firm. We have to be open with that process. And that's what an RFP, or request for proposals, would be. So we would do that request for proposals in January, have it due in February. The audit committee would meet, review, conduct interviews of the top couple firms, and then make the recommendation in March of 2022 to the Board of Education. And that would generally be for a 4-year contract. And that's an update on the audit process and audit bids. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Are we going to merge the budget committee with the audit committee?
We kind of talked a little bit about that last year. It's kind of nice to have the budget committee because we go through a little bit more detail about what the budget is. It is nice to connect those people who are on the budget committee on the audit because they see both pieces of that. I think keeping them separate but having the same people on both,
Okay.
just for 1 year, more year, we'll see that. I like personally having the budget committee and the audit committee because it really kind of gives me direction where the board is feeling things
Well,
are.
I especially like the idea of also having outsiders on that.
Yes, on the audit committee.
Community people
Yeah.
on that audit committee so that they can take a look at it.
The,
That way, everything is always transparent.
and they're very knowledgeable and very helpful. So I really do enjoy the audit committee people who are the board, but also the external, and they're business people from the business world that have experience with accounting and finance.
Yep, we had 3 community members on there this year and 2 board members.
Yep.
My question to you is reference to RFPs. Are there any criteria, qualifying criteria that we use in accepting RFPs from individuals who want to perhaps submit proposals?
Yes, so when we send that out, we advertise on our website, and we send out to people who have shown interest in the past or who have requested them. And in there, we have criteria set for what we're looking for the services to be provided.
So, are any of that criteria monetary? And I ask that because, as of recent, there was an RFP that the county sent out, and when you submitted the RFP, you had to have $100,000 to accompany the RFP. And then you had to have a certain amount of money before, if you won the RFP, if you got the bid, then you had to have a certain amount of money on hand to be able now to fulfill what the RFP requested. So do we have
There are some cases
monetary kinds of requirements in reference to RFP?
Yeah, there are some cases where that is the case, where there is a monetary, almost a deposit, if you will. It's nowhere near on those levels, but it's just that, it's a deposit to show interest, and then they get it back. A lot of that is done with the banking bid. So I've seen that.
Has any of that ever affected our abilities to accomplish the equity that we're talking about in reference to people that we contract with for services?
That is something we can look into. I know that with this proposal, we looked into minority-owned business, women-owned business, and that was part of the scoring guide with this. And so when we're looking at the monetary part, I don't know if it has ever been a detriment, but that is something we could definitely look into.
Yeah, I would think that we should, because if that's the case, in certain aspects of our equity, we may not be able to accomplish because we've actually created a situation that may be unobtainable, particularly with, smaller businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And given this scenario that we've got now with COVID, that's become even a more difficult challenge oftentimes. So I would like for us to be able to, review those, since we're talking about reviewing these things, these types of policies and regs with the equity plan, then I would believe that that would fall in line as well.
I think it'd be a great time to do it.
I have a question. There was a discrepancy between the documents that we'll be seeing in the executive meeting for the 4-year contracts and the bids
Mm-hmm.
and this 1-year extension.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if this was the appropriate time to speak about it or after. I think we're voting on this.
Correct. So what we're going to ask this evening is that we vote on the 1-year extension.
This would be for FY21?
This will be for this current
Okay. Okay.
yes, to do the audit work for this current year. Yes.
And so, so it was 36,000 for FY21 in the document in the executive meeting. Sorry, the executive, right? And then 39,000.
There was a
Correct.
difference because, you want to explain what happened?
Yes, and so when they do that, there was a 4-year bid, and what they could do is they could extend some costs out through those 4 years to provide a lower rate for those first couple of years. When they're doing it for an extension for 1 year, there's a couple expenditures that they can't spread out greater than that 1 year, and so that's why you see the increase.
So since their director's retired, we basically want to see how they're going to do without him before we sign up for a 4-year contract. Is that the idea?
Yes.
And possibly, even though they have been excellent with us, sometimes you want a new set of eyes for auditors.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Would someone like to make a motion for the approval of consensual items?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, did you all, and I'm going to tell you now because I will do this throughout, and I apologize. I grew up on the Italian Hill section in St. Louis. And so if I say guys, it is not meant to be sexist. It's just a bad habit that I got into when I was 3 years old, and I've never broken it. So guys,
Your core value system.
yeah.
And
core
y'all.
value system. That's right. Okay. Consensual items is if when you're going through any of the stuff, you check it off, give it to Amy, then we'll pull it, and then we can discuss it. If not, everybody just agrees, just to let everybody know. Okay, we've got a motion on to approve consensual? Yes?
Yes.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next, would someone like to make a motion for the closed meeting of the board immediately following this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I have a question. Can we do that on that quick?
It's
I thought-
posted.
Oh, it was already posted, okay.
It's
There's posting requirements. All right. We need a roll call vote on this one.
Director Asner,
Yes.
Director Byers. Yes. Director Faulkner,
Yes.
Director Hudson. Yes. Director Mueller,
Yes.
Vice President Petroff. Yes. And President Cuneo.
Yes. Would someone like to make a motion for a closed meeting of the Board of Education on April 13th and April 27th at 5:30 PM?
So moved.
Second.
Need a roll call on this, please.
Director Asner,
Yes.
Director Byers. Yes. Director Faulkner,
Yes.
Director Hudson. Yes. Director Mueller,
Yes.
Vice President Petroff. Yes. And President Cuneo.
Yes. Someone like to make a motion of the minutes of our past meetings?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Calendar of events, I would request everybody take a look at those. Board communications. Anybody have anything they want to say or add during this time period? I have one more thing. I received an email from Nancy Ide today that said, "Dear SSD board members, I want to take the opportunity to thank you all for your support and making me feel so welcome during my time on the SSD Board of Education. It was a true honor to serve on the board with you and a pleasure to be able to personally observe your commitment to the students and the families of SSD. Please know that I appreciate all that you have done and will continue to do for the district and its students, families, and staff. Best, Nancy. All right, anyone else have anything? All right, calendar events, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Want to take 5, and we can start before then, can't we? There's no reason why. Yeah, only take 5 minutes in case we need to use the restroom.